Good morning, gentlemen. Earlier in the series of our videos, we did talk about mental imaginary. Then we talked about what we call visualization. And there we did say there's need to understand what is imagination. Okay. Simultaneously, we also talked about it, storytelling, story writing, and story selling. In the same series of discussion, today we would talk about what we call it mental or imagination. Because this particular thing is very, very important uh, to understand when you are writing a TAT or you are talking to your interviewing officer. Some questions are asked, and when you have to answer a factual, probably you would say, yes, this is what is the fact. But if you have to think about it, imagine what are the possibilities, then you do require imagination. Now, to understand that what is imagination and in what way it is so different and how many types of imagination are there, we will be talking about them today. As I had said earlier, Albert Einstein had said that imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. It means now knowledge is limited to what is a fact. Imagination goes beyond that, what we have not even seen. Remember, imagine Jules Verne talking about landing on the moon way back in 98, somewhere 1890s. And ultimately in 60s, we were on the moon. How did he come to know about it? Was it his imagination or was it of knowledge? No, it was just imagination. So wherever facts cannot reach, there where imagination reaches. Through imagination, people can explore ideas of things that are not physically present, ranging from familiar for a, say, chocolate cake to never before experience alien aircraft, spacecraft appear in the sky, or even landing up somewhere in Mars or somewhere else. We did talk about memory. First and foremost, memory is the exact reproduction of content of past experience in the same order in which they were experienced in the past. So memory is whatever we have experienced that comes to the fore. So that's why it is called reproductive imagination, where you are trying to reproduce what you had seen earlier. Because it's content of the past experience which is being reproduced in the form of, in the same order it should ideally be produced, probably. That may vary. Where perception is dependent on external sensory information taken from what a person can see, hear, feel, taste, or touch the moment. Normally, we talk of perception, reception, perception, and apperception. Imagine we talk about thematic apperception test. So as far as reception is concerned, our all senses receives the information and the perception makes a vague idea of what the object is. And it apperception the exact feeling that you have got it depending upon individual, which will vary from individual to individual. We did talk about mental imaginary. He said it's an elaborate and multifarious cerebral course of cognitive depiction, which concerns the production of sensory earlier occurrences within the cognitive faculties. It can be ocular, what we see, it can be oral, or any other modalities. So here you are imagining, your mental imagine is what a brain is a thinks about what it is. And then we talk about visualization. is an extraordinary mental technique that involves the art of creating highly evocative and immersive mental imagery of a desired outcome or goal. You imagine, where would I be there after 5 years, sitting in AC room, having files, talking to our subordinates, or probably becoming Prime Minister of India and taking the direction or giving the direction where the country should move. That's visualization. It's different from mental imagery because it is much more targeted, focused, and result oriented. Visualization often entails using mental images to steer or sway our behavior in a desirable direction. Okay. Now, let's come back to the next term. That is, what is imagination? Imagination may be thought of as a faculty of mind that forms and manipulates images. Image is there. Now it's the manipulation and changes which are required to be done is what we call imagination. Propositions, concept, emotion, and sensation above and beyond something independently of incoming stimuli to open the realm of abstract, figurative, the possible, hypothetical, and pragmatic or universal. Means imagine a musician, he creates music from where? He got some tune, something, some vague idea. And then he imagines and he creates something new. Visualization, that you want to say, no, you talk about no movies. It's a creative, it's imaginative. So imagination justifies beliefs about possibilities. Now, I just gave an example of Jules Verne talking about landing on the moon, and we were in the moon. It was a possibility, or at least metaphysical or opposed to natural possibility. Hume has said it is an established maxim in metaphysics that whatever the mind clearly conceives includes the idea of possible existence, or in other words, that nothing we imagine is absolutely impossible. So whatever we imagine, that is what is going to be the possibility. That is going to be possibility. Imagination consists in reproducing the content of past experience and arranging the new order different from that in which they were originally experienced. So it has to have a base. Imagination has to have some base. Imagining, no, when we computerization came into play, we started with a machine language, then we came back to all different types of language. Today we are talking about AI. Imagination is generated from within and often unconsciously influenced by memories and feelings. Humans use imagination for a variety of reasons to acquire experience and knowledge about the world, to better understand another person's perspective, to solve problems, to create and interact with the artistic work, and more. Being more imaginative allows a person to make creative connection and inferences using their past experience and knowledge base. Lack of mentalization or the ability to differentiate between what is real and what is made up in the mind can lead to a person to react to an imagined fear. Probably, the person who's afraid of flying, he thinks that it's going to crash from where? Or it's real. So frequently leading to stress that, so if you go into negative direction, that image will create stress, anxiety, fear, and trauma. Even daydreaming, what is happening? It's a mind wanders. So daydreaming is an information processing state that combines knowledge and imagination. Okay. And research indicates that the more robust daydreaming is associated with superior intelligence. It occurs when the executive attention network and the default mode network collaborate together. Daydreaming allows people to shut out the external environment and clarify positive long-term goals towards which they can then work. Visualizing their future, self can motivate them to take the necessary steps to hone up the skill so that they can achieve the success that they desire, success they desire. Okay. So now what is the different types of imagination? So first and foremost is what we call it is a passive imagination. In passive imagination, the mind is comparatively passive and does not make any effort of the will to picture the image. So whatever is given, I take it. That's all. The images come of themselves to the mind and are combined automatically by the suggestive force. Suggested by whom? By others, by other than you. You are not motivated to suggest. So when we are in the listless mood, fall into daydream and build castle in the air, our imagination is passive. We do not know what we are imagining, what we are dreaming. Then active imagination. In active imagination, the mind exerts itself to picture an image. It makes an effort to receive the content of past experience and combine them in the new pattern. The combination image is affected by effort of the will. The mind actively selects certain materials, rejects others, and constructs new image. When we write an essay, we put forth effort of the mind to remember the relevant element of past knowledge and arrange them in the fresh manner. Similarly, now suppose you have got in a TAT, you have got a picture of accident. What happens? That scene has been given to you. Now you go back in your past. You have either seen an accident, you have met with an accident, or you have heard certain stories of the accidents. So that past is now combined with the picture which is being shown to you. And then the story that you are trying to write is a mixture of the two. You're making effort, or you're bringing your past experience to the present. And whatever the negative or positive, you are trying to reject certain of the past experiences. Even the picture that we are seeing it, your own visualization, your imagination of what portion you are going to concentrate or which portion of the picture that we shown to you reject, it all depends on you. So that's called active imagination. Then called receptive imagination. Receptive means the mind takes an effort to picture a scene described. The materials of imagination and the order of the combination are suggested to the mind from without. When we read stories, novel, drama, poem, history, geography, travels, etc., we receive that imagination in which the image has come. From where? From outside. Because when I'm reading a story, I'm going back to the mode in which the writer has written it. And that's why we enjoy that story. So that's called receptive imagination. Then comes creative imagination. In creative imagination, the mind constructs an imaginary situation. It creates a new image out of the material which it receives. That in case of TAT, you got a picture. From where? From within itself and arrange it in the fresh order. Then when an engineer constructs the plan of a building, he has creative imagination. When a novelist arranges the incidents of his story into a plot, the creative imagination. When you write a story in theatre, it's a creative imagination. Then comes intellectual imagination or cognitive imagination. It serves the purpose of knowledge and intellectual construction. When Newton hit upon the hypothesis of gravitation to explain the fall of body, that is intellectual. Because many people must have seen something falling from the tree. But why? Only Newton could imagine that it was a law of gravitation. So this is called intellectual imagination or cognitive imagination. Both creative imagination and creative imagination serve the purpose of knowledge. When we read history, geography, novels, etc., we receive imagination which adds to our knowledge. Thus, intellectual imagination may be either creative or even receptive. So it is a combination. It has to have some base from where it has come. Okay. Next comes a practical imagination. We always try to say that you should create, your story when you write in a TAT must be possible. That called we did talk about practical intelligence. So that is what is practical imagination. Practical has some practical purpose. It is also called pragmatic imagination. It is involved in practical construction. It is controlled by objective condition in order to realize a particular end, it must satisfy the real condition of the external world. What is possible? What is possible? That is practical imagination. If we want to construct a building, it should be practically possible. Then it's pragmatic. Must conform to objective whatever you want. It must be subject to objective control. When we desire a plan, a building or machine, we have practical imagination. No problem. When we devise plan for picnic, railway journey, we have practical imagination. It fulfills the practical needs, and how you imagine that becomes pragmatic. It all varies. Everyone can arrange a picnic. There is no problem. But to what extent are you pragmatic? That is most important. Then aesthetic imagination. It satisfies our aesthetic impulse. It is directed towards the gratification of sentiments. It does not satisfy any practical need, nor does it add to our knowledge. It is either practical construction or intellectual imagination. It satisfies our craving for beauty. Aesthetic imagination is the imagination which is involved in the creation of appreciation of beauty. Hence, the constructive building is essentially free. It does not satisfy external condition. So why we say as civil engineer and architect, what is the difference? Architect tries to add aesthetic sense, and a civil engineer tries to make it a practical building. The constructive activities has for its an emotional satisfaction and gives pleasure. Its value lies in the itself and is independent of objective values. When a musician composes a song or poet composes a poem, painter paints a picture, he exercises aesthetic imagination. It can be fantastic. What is fantastic imagination? It's merely play of imagination as in daydreaming. We always say those who are writer, कवि जो होते हैं वो आधा पागल होते हैं. This is what we keep on talking about, isn't it? So it is because they have got fantastic imagination. The imagination which forms ideals of truth, beauty, and the like is artistic. Then image imagination. Memory is reproduction imagination. It is reproduce because it reproduces past experience. It is exactly reproduction of the past experience. Imagination is productive imagination. So there's a difference between it consists in reproducing the elements of past experience and rearranging them into new pattern. Memory image is faithfully reproduction of the original perception, like Taj Mahal. You have seen a Taj Mahal and you want to reproduce it. That's a reproduce. That's a image imagination. That image imagination. You've got something to be there. Now, next. How does the imagination start from the childhood? Okay. Imagination is a mental manipulation of the objects of past experience, is what we talked about. The child, when he is born, gradually develops the power of imagination. It is manifest in the manual skill, the way he holds a toy, raises a finger, laughs. So it's a constructiveness and it's master storytelling in his own way. So first is manual skill. The developed manual skill in the child shows that he has developed a power of imagination. He grasps and manipulates objects and gradually acquires manual skill. The manual skill depends upon mental manipulation or imagination of the object which the child is trying to hold on or look at it. When a child makes a house of damp sand, He has an image of house in his mind. Clay modeling, making kite, ink pots, cups, boats of paper, and other men's skill beat testimony to the child imagination. Make believe. The child imagination expressed to make believe, which is an important element of the play. The child boy rides a stick and treats it to be horse. He knows that it is a mere stick, but imagines it to be horse for the time being. The little girl prays the mother and treats the doll as her baby. Thus, making believe is an expression of imagination. Play with imaginary companions also is an expression of imagination. Constructiveness. The child concept also is an expression of its power of imagination. He builds a house with a damp sand or mud, arranges dolls into parties, takes things apart and puts them together. In these acts of construction, the child sees the ways in which objects can be arranged or mentally manipulate certain objects. Storytelling, we did talk about it quite in last video. The child later develops the power of storytelling. He invents a story out of elements of past experience. Thus, he shows the power of constructive imagination. In make believe, the child manipulates actual objects. In a storytelling, the child thinks of certain objects and combines them together in his own way. Some children are capable of making verses, which also is a manifestation of imagination itself. Okay, now next. Imagination depends upon memory, which depends on perception. And perception depends upon our sensory input that we get it. Children under 3 have only memory of reproductive imagination. They can only revive their past experiences. At later stage, their imagination is largely receptive. They can picture image as suggested by other person or books. They cannot create images. During the 3rd and 4th year, children have abundance of creative imagination. They are very fond of fairy tales. In the disregard of reality, fairies don't exist. From 4 to 8 years, their creative imagination is of the fantastic type and divorced from reality due to their lack of knowledge of external world and its law. Manual skill, constructiveness, make believe in play, storytelling indicates the development of imagination in children. As they grow older, they acquire knowledge of external world and become more practical. Their creative imagination ceases to be fantastic and becomes more pragmatic. And I say, pragmatic imagination satisfies the demands of the reality and is more objective than subjective. During adolescence, fantastic imagination again becomes predominant with a strong element of emotion. It takes the form of daydreaming. Adolescents become the heroes of their own daydreams. Adolescence is preeminently the age of daydreaming. Excessive daydreaming is harmful to the individual. It makes him worthless and unable to cope with the world. With the passing away of adolescence, imagination again becomes pragmatic. It ceases to be fantastic and emotional. Pragmatic imagination takes the place of emotional daydreaming. At last, artistic imagination emerges. It creates ideals of truth, good, and beauty. It rises above the practical needs of life and satisfies the deeper craving of the mind. They also be called idealistic imagination. Having talked about it in this series of mental imaginary, visualization, and now imagination, combined with story writing, storytelling, and story selling, all these are very, very important if you want to do well in life. It's not restricted only to SSV or story writing or talking to interviewing officer. or thinking imaginatively in finding solution to the problems. It's a life skill. And we must learn to exploit these skills as much as we can so as we are successful in life. Hope it meets your aspirations. Thank you. Good luck. We'll meet again. Thank you.